defines a regional park as a park that residents would be willing to travel a radius of up to 15 miles to attend. If you're familiar with the size of our city, a 15-mile radius encompasses our entire city, which really gives us some flexibility on saying that any park in our city, dependent upon its features, could be classified as a regional park. So if you're a visual person like me, it helps to have a little bit of a graphic to explain what we really mean with this recommendation. And so, for example, if a district, let's say District 1, collects $100,000 in park impact fees, 50% of that, or in this case, 50,000 of that would be allocated towards a regional park, and 50,000, the other 50,000 would be allocated for a park from which the district sourced those funds. So in this case, District 1. So what I really want to hear from you today is, number one, I'm available to answer any questions as we kind of flew through that presentation, but also I want to hear your feedback on both prongs of that recommendation. First, on the part of using our existing funding, that $5.5 million for parks bond projects, and then also your feedback on using future funding, an allocation split of 50% on regional parks and 50% for district parks. If you like that split, if you want to see it something different, maybe 60-40, if you have other ideas, that's really what we'd like to get some feedback on today. So with that, I'll stop talking and allow you guys some opportunity. Yes?
I just have a question about pretty much the end of your presentation on how a district will divide, say, the last one, $100,000. Obviously, there were districts that generated a lot more funding. So when you say the district that generated that funding, it was going to go directly back there, or is it going to get split between all the districts?
It would go back to that district.
So yeah. District 1 would be heavily disadvantaged in that case.
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
The reasoning for that is Florida state statutes really requires that there has to be a connection between the new users that come with, say, a new development and the park that they would be using. So there has to be that connection. Yes.
So my question has to do with Snyder Park.
Okay.
I know when they were proposing this, they talked about all the money that Snyder Park would make would go back into improvements of Snyder Park. And I don't know if that's in their contract or not. But so then you would say, like, okay, they pay $100,000 a year to the city, so $50,000 would stay in Snyder and $50,000 would go among all the other parks?
I'm not certain on the specifics of Snyder Park, but are you referencing park impact fees or another revenue stream?
I think she's talking pickleball.
Like the pickleball court, the fort.
So that
has nothing to do with
that. That would not have anything to do with this.
So this is just what the builders pay in?
Correct.
Okay.
I saw your hand first, and then we'll go.
Okay, so is this approval for each fiscal year? So let's say we do this fiscal year and, they decide to do different percentages or...
So right now we're looking to just create a standardized policy that would really last until we decide to revisit the policy again in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about the existing funds and the recommendations there. So it seems like, I guess my first question is Tunnel Top Park is considered one that's still being, is that right? The existing funds?
Yeah, so part of that project of Tunnel Top used park impact fees for it to be a completed project.
Okay, but going forward, it wouldn't be for Tunnel Top or Carter, Holiday, or Lockhart.
Right, so Carter Park, currently that came to you all before, so that's already an allocation already. Okay. And similar to Tunnel Top, those funds will be used specifically for that purpose as it pertains to the funding that's already been allocated.
Yeah, and as even though the major construction of that has been completed, the commission is still exploring some ideas on how to fully utilize that space. And so that would, if this board were to approve that, it would be one of the areas that impact fees could go towards, because it's a new park that's expanding capacity within the city.
Yvette, for the record, can you state your full name?
Oh, yes, Yvette Matthews, Acting Director of the Office of Management and Budget.
So I have a couple questions about the current funding process. Thank you for highlighting how you've been able to go through community investment plan and the budget amendment process. If that gets freed up, then what else, what are the other demands for those two allocations?
Can you say that one more
with the community investment plan, you're saying currently,
Yes.
if you need money for new improvements or expansion, you have to go into the community investment plan or the budget allocation. So what else is being pulled from that? How would this free dollars?
Great question. So right now, every year we develop a 5-year community investment plan. So when it comes to parks, Carl's team submits what they hope to see over the next 5 years, and then we prioritize resources. Most parks are general fund related, so we prioritize general fund dollars to support that 5-year plan, or at an ad hoc basis, he may bring forth a project that needs additional funding. So what this really allows us to do is we individually look at the projects and determine what funding source we can use to support them. If we transition to this plan, what it would allow us to do is, instead of pulling from a whole pool of park impact fees, we would then pull directly from that district's park impact fees. So the 50-50 split allows 50% to go to regional parks, and then the other 50% would be if the park was like a district or a neighborhood park, is that what we're calling them? A neighborhood park or district park, then it would come from that district's pool of funding.
Then how much money is in the community investment plan
So
currently?
the city's total community investment plan is about $1 billion. So it's really, not all of that is parks, of course, that's water sewer fund, general fund, so it's a pretty big plan. But we do focus specifically on general fund when we're talking about the parks themselves. Yes. Martha.
Good evening, ladies. Familiar faces. So how's the regional parks are funded right now? Through the general funds?
So right now, most parks are funded through either the general fund, the parks bond, which is allowing for this expanded capacity that we have, or park impact fees are usually like the last dollar. So if we've already funded a park, we realize that park is over budget, we utilize park impact fees to fill that gap to support it. But the major funding sources are general fund and the parks bonds right now.
Okay, so with these allocations, because right now the parks impact fee, they go to all the parks, they not necessarily stay in a district, is that correct?
That's correct.
So if we go forward, we support this, there would be 50% stay in a district and another 50% to the regional.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the $5.4 million that we have, we can use that to pick up some of the shortfalls that we have for Carter Park and some of the other ones?
Yes, in theory, that's kind of the idea, that we currently know that we are in scarce times as it pertains to funding our projects, and this can help with that, which is, Bass Park, Carter Park, those types.
And we all know because of the increase in construction costs, and that's why we need to use that, find some source of funding to complete these parks.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. I think it's a great idea, personally.
I just wanted to take a moment to maybe make a suggestion while we have the representatives here that can clarify on, obviously there's a big discrepancy when you look at how the district and the funds will break down. I would like to suggest for maybe the board to consider, if we're going to proceed with this, that instead of doing like a 50-50 split, take a small percentage and do like 45 from each budget, and then possibly use the other 10 or 15, 20% as a discretionary fund for parks that are possibly outside of a district, like a beach area where obviously there's major construction and a lot of development downtown. But you can see District 3 and District 1 are heavily disadvantaged with the way the split is right now at 50-50. Just something for the board to consider moving forward.
Hi. Before I say anything, I want to submit a Form AB. I don't want any appearances of impropriety because a family member of mine owns a property and is developing a property adjacent to Smoker Park. So before I make any statements that could possibly affect it, I'd like to submit that for the record. How did they come up with the 50-50 split? Is this just an arbitrary number that was developed?
It was arbitrary just to start the discussion.
Okay, and then with the funds that are going to be allocated to within each individual district, you know, I think the example was $100,000, then $50,000 would go to that allocated district. Who determines how those funds are spent?
You want to take this one?
Sure. So once we determine how the split is going to occur, there will be a funding pool. So one for each district, and then one for regional projects. And it will continue to follow the same process that we currently use, where we prioritize it as part of the community investment plan, that 5-year plan that we build out, as well as targeting ad hoc any projects that have shortfalls that need additional resources to get across the finish line.
So it would still be the community investment fund that would be managing those funds, except that the funds in each district could only be used for certain projects within that district.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Sir, Tricia Saintville Joseph, Assistant City Attorney. Hi.
Hey.
Thank you for submitting the form. Could you please state your conflict on the record?
My what?
Do you said
I don't-
potential conflict?
My related family members own a property adjacent to Smoker Park and are currently developing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figure anything that I discuss about any parks could tangentially affect it.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that it's, you know, known and that there's no appearance of impropriety. I'm not personally invested in.
Right. That was going to be my question.
No.
Do you believe you have any pecuniary interest
No,
that would
but
affect
my family.
Okay.
My wife's family does.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
I've got one more question. Back to what you were saying about the underfunding of the District 1 in this particular case, or some of the districts that don't have the balance, if you will, of the impact fees, the development. Is there a way for the Parks Board to transfer money from a District 4, which seems to have lots of impact fees, to a District 1 that has a need and a specific purpose?
So that would be more so led by our commission, and you could certainly make a recommendation to that. If a project came forward, you could make that recommendation, but for those district-led fundings, that would essentially be for the commission to make a determination.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to make a quick point in case I missed it earlier. The funding that is collected from developments has to be connected to where we're putting the funding. So there has to be, you know, some clear-cut rules when we're doing that process on, you know, is where we're putting the funding benefiting the new users from a given development. The further away you get spatially, I think that argument's going to get a little bit more challenging. But as you think of through that process, that would be something to consider.
That may be a little tough when we got high rises going up all over the place to build parks where those things are at.
All right, Marta?
Yes, thank you. So I see your concern that the District 1 doesn't collect, but that doesn't mean they're not going to have a project funded, because that's one of the options to fund the projects. They can still get the project done through the general funds or through the parks fund. That's correct, right? Also, I want to just say that on last meeting, we moved forward with the land acquisition for the park, for the Bar Harbor. So I understand the commissioners said yes to that acquisition as well. So I think they're looking for funding. So probably the pool is lower than 5.4 million because the data shows from March and commissioners approved the land acquisition for the park in Bar Harbor.
So the funding that was used to acquire that property is from the land acquisition fund of the bond. So this won't have any impact to that.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay,
Any
so
other questions?
I just want to clarify something since it seems like we're kind of going along the same topic here. So if right now this is just a proposal, right? This is not something that's set in stone. Now, would it be out of bounds, and this might be a question for legal and Carl, to have some sort of a 50-50 split of 10% for a discretionary fund for an emergency, and if there's a flooded park or something like that, whatever you want to, you know, I call it a discretionary fund mostly for like the reason of an emergency, or if there's a natural disaster or something like that. In certain areas, like a District 1 or a District 3 will not have that funding. Is this something that would be an option moving forward, to have a small percentage of either 50 split go towards that discretionary fund, for lack of a better term?
So keep in mind the premise of the park impact fee itself is essentially like an expansion of something. So like if there was flooding, we couldn't use park impact fee money for that. But if we were adding a component to a park, or if we were adding something that expands what's not currently there, that's how we could use the money. So it's not a carte blanche where we could just use it for relative services.
And the general fund usually supports those types of challenges. We budget for facilities assessment funds, and we also have a risk fund that supports in the event that there is a natural disaster. So there is a funding source for those types of activities.
So what I'm understanding is basically the 50-50 is only optional.
Not necessarily. You could do 100%, 0%, 40-60. I mean, in terms of that, there's quite a bit of flexibility. Or if there's, you know, some other idea on the table on how to standardize those allocations, that would be something that we'd look for feedback today on.
Thank you.
I think this is a creative way to get our parks funded, and I wanted to explore what would be the con of doing a 60-40, where 60 stays in the district versus 50-50. But I'm in favor of 50-50. I was just wondering if you can explain to us what might be a negative of changing the numbers.
So 60% to the district, 40%?
Yes.
It would really just mean that the districts would benefit more directly than citywide. So you would see more funding, you know, going to District 4 for their projects. It really would just enhance the neighborhood parks more so than the regional parks, but that would be really the only con. Barbara, I think you had a question, and then we can... Okay.
Sorry. You mentioned before the size of the, what was it called, the Community Investment Fund? Was that billion?
With a B.
A B, okay. Just, you know, making that clear. So really, we are not talking about a large percentage of the funds that is being spent in the community. We're talking sort of, and I don't want to make small of these numbers, but a small percentage of the total budget that's going to our parks. Is that right?
Yes, that is accurate, but it's also a very targeted funding pool because it can only be used for the expansion of parks. So really, because this board is really focused on that area, it's a small percent of the city's overall CIP, but this is a very targeted pool of funds for expansion of parks.
Do you know what percentage of the Community Investment Fund is allocated to parks?
Not off the top of my head, but I will share that with Carl and get it back to you.
Okay.
Yes.
Because if, and I don't know this off the top of my head, that's why I ask, if if we're allocating, let's say, 200 million to parks, and I'm sure it's lower than that, whatever number it is, it would be good to know what percentage of the parks budget we're dealing with here. You know what I mean?
For context, our general fund allocation for CIPs every year is about 21 million, and that's all of the general fund. So that includes, all of the capital projects that we're doing across the city. So I'm sure parks, and the amount varies from year to year depending on what the activities are. So it would be less than 20 million, significantly less than 20 million a year.
Yeah, and also another thing to consider is that when we passed the bond referendum, we basically wiped our CIP list clean because that included playgrounds and development that we had in the caucuses for that. And so now that we're in the midst of the bond and we're moving past these here projects and things forth, we'll be able to start paying in more CIP projects, so forth and so on, to be funded.
So this actually could be a large percentage of the money that's going to parks that we're talking about.
So large could be relative depending on your interpretation of that. But I know when we talk about playgrounds, and part of the reason why we're looking at creative ways is because the cost of construction has really gone up. The cost of playgrounds have gone up. So when our playgrounds reach an end of life cycle, we'll have to replace those, and playgrounds are running anywhere from $600,000 on up, depending on the size and the complexity of them. And so when we may get an allocation, I'm just throwing a number out here, don't hold this to me, of $3 million, that $3 million is divvied up on a variety of projects. And so the number sounds pretty good, but once you get down to the number of projects that we have to forecast, it impacts them.
The reason why I'm asking this is because I want to make sure that the decision that we make doesn't hamstring the Parks Department from doing the necessary projects that need to happen. Mm-hmm. Because, we're being asked, okay, pick numbers, 50-50, 60-40, 40-60, but the decision, let's say we did 100% go to the district parks and none to the regional, we could really be hamstringing the regional parks budgets. So I just want to make sure that we've got sort of the full understanding of, the impact that the decision that we're going to make has. So it would be helpful, I think, for me at least, to try to have a better understanding of to what degree are we going to affect the parks budget here?
So, and this kind of goes back into the methodology of what the park impact fee is used for. So CIP, when we develop programs for that particular item, that's for replacement or special projects. Park impact fee is specifically for an expansion of a service. So the methodology of those are completely different in terms of what we're funding, when we're funding it. These CIP projects are 3 to 5 years out, and we forecast that, versus, let's say, District 1, and we're in the midst of a project, and there's a shortfall with the bond of, let's say, $500,000. That could be something that comes to the board, goes to commission for use of park impact fee, versus what CIP does, which is a forecast of repairing, replacing end-of-life items.
Sure. I think I understand that. I think the point that I'm trying to drill on is if we did 0% go to regional parks and 100% go to district parks, would we be preventing the regional parks from being able to build new things in those regional parks? Will we be preventing that from happening based off of the needs of the regional parks at this time? And the converse, if we put 100% to the regional parks, are we then going to be postponing projects in the district parks that people really want to get done, but now we just messed up the budget for those new projects?
So I think one thing that's important to keep in mind about park impact fees is that it's usually our last dollar funding, right? So it's not the funding source for the whole project. It's usually the funding source that we use to fill the gap. So how we allocate park impact fees usually will not determine fully whether or not we're moving forward with a project. It usually just determines, as a shortfall is identified, how much additional resources we can put towards the project, or actually what the whole project scope can look like.
Or the time frame of the project, right? Because if you don't have enough funds, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have enough funds, let's say you wanted to build something in Holiday Park and you didn't have enough funds, well, you might have to wait for more funds to accumulate before you could continue
Right.
or begin construction on it, because we just took away all of the funds
Well,
from here for the regional parks and put it into the district parks.
That's why I say it's the last dollar funding, because we wouldn't really wait on park impact fees to come in to determine whether or not we're funding a project. It's usually that we've decided to do a project and then we're determining what's the best way to fund that project. So
Yeah.
that's what the whole community investment plan is about, looking at all of the projects that are being proposed and determining which ones are a priority for the city. And then we look at what funding sources we can use to actually meet the needs of those priorities. So this will not stop a specific park. It's really just determining the funding pool of how we fund the parks that are identified as priorities.
Sure. I just want to make sure that we don't actually make, do a little bit more harm to maybe some things that the city thinks is important by us allocating funds away from something when it may be important.
Right.
I just like to get one clarification on this matter. It's on this topic, and I know this is about park impact fees, and we kind of started delving into the general fund, but the general fund doesn't play by the same rules as the park impact fees, correct? So the general fund, which I think you said is over $1 billion, versus our park impact fees that are allocated up to $5.4 million now. It's like, the way the general fund can be used, it's not as hamstringed as the park impact fees would be. So I think that helps me understand what you're saying. It's going to fill a gap maybe that the general fund might not cover, and probably has a wider scope of how the funds can be used.
So,
would that be accurate?
If I may, I think a good analogy to this would be, if you're in your car and you happen to find $20 in there, you feel pretty good about that. But you didn't plan for that $20 to be there. And that's kind of how we look at the park impact fee, because we know construction projects are coming, but sometimes the money and how it's allocated varies from year to year depending on the amount of construction that takes place. And so we may not know how much money is going to be available 6 months from now versus what we've had, because those fundings don't match up every year the same amount. And so that's what this does. It's essentially another resource to provide an increased service for the community.
Carl, so, you're the expert here. Are you good with 50-50 split? Does that kind of solve, help the park?
So what it does do is it allows flexibility in the sense of projects and project funding.
But you would, you would rather see a 50-50 than a 60-40, or it doesn't really matter?
Yes, and from my vantage point, it's still funding, whether it's 60-40 or 50-50. I think when this was broached to commission, their thought was 50-50 because there's a good allocation for the district as well as from the community as a whole.
Let me ask you, suppose we go with the 50-50, how difficult would it be down the road to change it to 60-40, 40-60, 70-30, whatever?
So we're discussing with our friends in the city attorney's office, actually doing an ordinance change to make sure that we memorialize the change that is being recommended, which is why we're trying to get all stakeholder feedback as we prepare for that. But like anything that's done by the city, there's always an opportunity to change it. We're just looking for some initial feedback so that we can try something different.
Okay.
And I just want to add that those fundings are not guaranteed. That, as Carl mentioned, as the developer's building, some year it's a good year, some year there's not so much construction going on, or maybe it is a construction, but they already paid. I think 50-50 is a good start. The district allocation, they deserve to receive something, not less than 50%, because they're the ones who deal with that construction. Remind you all that they deal with the construction. That's the impact on their community. The roads are probably built. The water line needs to put in. They deal with dust, noise, and everything. So I think it's a fair game to put 50-50, and that's a good start.
I agree.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right. One question that I just have on like the 60-40, 50-50, because I'm kind of confused, but Carter Park last month, we allocated those funds to Carter Park. If we did a 50-50 split going forward, would it that been impacted by how much we would have given to Carter Park? Because I know it's like a number one priority. So, if that leads to an impact, then I would say it makes a difference. But.
Yeah, so in that example, using Carter Park, we took the $600,000, which was from land acquisition funds for District 3. That was for Carter to help bridge that funding cap, and then we moved it to Bass so that project could begin. So the land acquisition is different from the park impact.
Sorry, I thought it was the park fees.
No.
But
Is it okay to make a motion, Chair?
Do you all need a motion?
Do we have one more question?
Yes.
Are there any more?
Yes, we're looking for a motion to be seconded, and if there's any discussion, that will be up to you all, and then a vote.
So I'd like to make a motion to move forward with the 50-50 allocation of the impact fees.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Me.
Mary. That was X-Team.
Right.
May I comment before the vote? The discussion has ended? No. Okay.
No.
So what I was going to say was, I was going to say, given that, and this is just how I view it, that usually the larger projects, which tend to happen in the regional parks, are always going to be funded. Those are the big ticket items that the city wants to get done. I would feel more comfortable if there'd be more, a higher percentage allocated to the districts, given what you said about they're the ones that deal with the impact of the development. They're the ones that, if the city doesn't have the funds for it, it's the things that are important to people that live in that area that are getting that impact, and it's probably the smaller projects in those things that are in those areas that are not going to be funded. So I would love to see a higher percentage for the districts.
Let me ask you. You said that regional parks are basically anything within 15 miles radius, and our city's 15 miles. So basically, any regional park could intentionally be a district park.
In theory, yes.
Yes. So there's really not a whole lot of difference. It's just a matter of allocating the funds.
Well, the difference comes in the type of amenities and features that the park has.
Okay.
So, for example, the Aquatic Center is a regional special use facility. It's the only park, if you will, in the city that has the dive tower and the competition pools like that. So that would be something that would be regional because people from throughout the city would go to. But it is also in a district, so.
I think it's a good start at 50-50. Any more discussion?
Yes, before we go to a vote, are you going to abstain, sir? Yes.
No, I'm happy to vote.
Well, no, according to the form and the discussion we had earlier, it's your wife's parents are the ones with the
Yes.
the potential. Let's see. It will inure to the benefit of your parents, your wife's parents. And Florida Statute 112 indicates that relative includes mother and father-in-law.
Can I see the paper?
Sure, absolutely. If you look in the middle.
But I'm an appointed officer, and appointed officers may do so, right? Although Although you must stay for voting, you are not prohibited by Section 112 from other. Oh, you're right. You must abstain from voting. However,
Before the vote, you have
okay.
to state your
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. No, you're great. You saved me a big headache.
Okay.
Okay, so
Roll
I'm going to
call.
abstain.
All righty.
Thank you.
Mr. Collazo. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Motion was by Eckstein. Mr. Eckstein.
Yes.
Just a moment. I don't see those. Okay. And seconded. Ms. Palanquin.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Collazo.
I vote yes.
Ms. Tarko.
Yes.
Ms. Oglesby.
Yes.
Ms. McGill.
Yes.
Ms. Rexo.
Yes.
Ms. Sisler.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover is abstained, correct?
Yes, you have to
And-
record it as abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Lykoff.
Yes.
Passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank
So-
you, ladies.
Sorry, but the other thing that we needed your feedback on how we utilize the existing funds, because there is currently that pool of $5.5 or $5.4 million. Is the board also in favor of utilizing those to address any shortfalls with the signature Parks Bond projects?
That would require, oh, okay.
I move to vote to distribute what's the amount of calling? Because you said like 5.4. What's the fund from?
Existing.
The existing,
I
yeah.
move the existing fund to complete the shortfall within the Parks Bond signature projects.
I second that.
Okay. Hey.
Roll call, please.
Any discussion on this particular part?
I apologize.
No discussion? Let's have a roll call.
Sorry, I got it. Okay. I just need a moment. 1 sec. Okay. You sure?
Point of discussion, with that money, would it be evenly split among these special projects or whatever? Is there a priority list?
Yeah, so it'd be wherever the shortfalls are identified. So as Carl's team receives costing information, they share with us where there are shortfalls. And so that would be the pool of funding that we go to support any of those shortfalls.
Okay, thank you.
Would we have any say in those funds being allocated to certain projects?
So it goes before the city commission as part of the
Okay.
budget amendment process. So it would go before the commission.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Oglesby?
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein?
Yes.
Mr. Collazo?
Yes.
Ms. Palanquin?
Yes.
Ms. Tarko?
Yes.
Ms. McGill?
Yes.
Ms. Rexo?
Yes.
Ms. Sisler?
Yes.
And Chair Lykoff?
Yes.
Passed unanimously.
Thank you very much for coming. Next item would be proposed amendments to park rules and regulations. Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. So, as you all know, we have been reviewing our park rules for the better part of a couple of months. And we took the opportunity, thanks to our wonderful assistant city attorney here, to look at our park rules in totality and made some adjustments to some of the language, added some stronger language to some of them, as well as clarify some areas in our park rules. Now, as we talk through this, one of the questions or comments rather is, I want to point out, is the intent and what the intent of these are. And so you'll see with the red line here of those adjustments made on the park rules relative to the intent. And then you'll also notice as we maneuver throughout the document the various adjustments that I was just speaking of regarding the adjustments made to include stronger language or clarity within the park rules. And then lastly, which I know, well, second to lastly, is it pertains to our dogs in parks. Our city commission at a previous meeting wanted to get the board's input on what parks do we want to allow dogs in. They're seeking some additional feedback from this board, and based on what your recommendations are on those parks, I'll share that with them at a future meeting.
Carl, we have some people here who've signed up to speak. Do you want to find out which item they want to speak on?
I think I know.
I don't know why you would say that. But, do you want to hear them first and go to the dog thing first so we can get them on their way?
Yep.
Okay. First up.
Mr. Chair, before you begin, I just want to point out, not to take anything away from Carl, but there's also language regarding service animals that you all had previously discussed and possibly approved that is in black. So we didn't put it in red because those were proposed changes. But if you are, again, able to change or tweak that language if you decide to do so tonight.
Thank you.
That's in section 4.
And one other thing before it escapes my mind is when we talk about the intent and where, I want to make it known about the sections and amending the sections as it pertains, that this pertains to city parks, public and recreation facilities. So if you notice on 4.12 balloon releases, it doesn't specifically mention the
4.12?
Yep, 4.12. It doesn't specifically mention the beach, but the beach is a park. But for clarity and purposes of this, I think we want to include city parks, public and recreation facilities, so it's all encompassing.
I agree. Yeah. Okay, we ready for people to come up and speak? Mira Lang, you want to go first? You signed up first? Okay. Push the button to return to red.
Oh. Hi, good evening. Yes, it's she, the lady on the paper. My name is Mira Lang. I am a resident of District 4, Croyston Park. Yes, oh, no, the last time I spoke, it had a timer, so I don't know how to time myself. I'm sorry. You feel free to cut me off when the time is...
I'll take care of that for you.
Yes. Ooh, I'm in serious mode today. Okay, yes, so I'm biased. I mean, I'm a dog woman. I'm a crazy dog lady. No, we're not using that language anymore. I'm not a crazy dog lady. I am a fierce advocate for the dogs, of course, and for the parks. So I guess, is this a conflict of interest? Because if I were mayor, I would give like 95% of the city budget to the parks and the rec, but I'm not, so it's okay. Yeah, I spoke at the last meeting. I had a much better, more eloquent speech last time. I'm just kind of surprised that we're here again still, which is good. That's good. We should be here again. I sound like a psycho today. I didn't come prepared. I want the dogs to be in a lot more parks. I mean, I'm kind of in my bubble now in District 4, but if, heavens forbid I go to like another district, I would love to be able to bring my dog. That would be great. Olivia loves Snyder Park. Well, I'm trying to take her in the water. She doesn't really like it, but she's warming up to it a little bit. I'm making a fool of myself, so I'm just going to call it. But I really just want to see more accessibility for dogs. And I know the dog poop. I know it's a problem, of course. In an ideal God's worlds, I guess they just wouldn't poop. But we can't control that. So we must clean up the dog poop. Of course, we must clean up the dog poop. I'm saying we, like I'm speaking for everybody. I'm not. I like to clean up the dog poop. And I want there to be more money so that if God forbid the dog owners who don't pick up the poop, it would be nice to have backup, a poop backup. Yes. It keeps saying this is going to look terrible for law school when I go in there. So I'm going to call it. Thank you. I just really thank you so much. And please, let's get some more access for the dogs.
Merritt, can I ask you a question? Mayor, I'd like to ask Merritt. Mayor, did you speak at a commission meeting? Did you speak at the last? Okay, I thought I recognized you. Not everybody's like you. Okay. Okay, no, that's all right. That's okay.
Ted, you're up next.
Hey, Charlie, how you doing? The Ted and Sarah, president of the River Oaks Civic Association. I noticed District 4, we have 4 Civic Association presidents here representing for this meeting right here. And Carlos, who's on the board of Croissant Park. So District 4 is well represented here. I think the way it's worded now is just fine. We're talking about leashed dogs in parks. We're not talking about just letting dogs run wild and doing all that. And there's our specifications for a removal of a dog. I think they're very well written. If the dog is unruly, or if it's in like the playground area or something, then the dog can be removed. But I think, like we have Gore Betts Park right around the corner from where I live, and every morning that's a dog central with everybody. The neighbors are meeting from 7 to 8 in the morning, and then again from like 5 to 6 at night. And but like we're talking about leash dogs. We're not talking dogs gone wild and stuff. And that's, if I'm walking by Gore Betts Park and I have my Lily, my elderly chocolate lab, that if I want to sit down on a bench and have her just laying under the tree next to me, that seems like common sense and not that absurd. Like I said, the key word here is leashed. They're not just running wild. And at Gore Betts Park, one end on the south side is open, and way down on the north side is the kids' playground. But then there's a lot of buffer area in between. I think this thing is well written now. They're not in the parks. They're not in the children's area. They're not on the courts. They're not on the playing fields. And it just seems like common sense to me. That's all. And I would just like to see that done. Thank you.
Ted, question. I think one of the things we have an issue with is trying to, I think a lot of us agree with the way it's written because we helped write it. So I guess part of the problem is the actual rollout of doing this at all 112 parks that we have. So how do you feel about a phasing in of this at different parks and different districts?
Yeah, that to me would be logical. That wouldn't be bad. Or if you had it at a time, try it for 6 months. Try it for the first year, then go back and relook at it. But I think, I think phasing it in, it's not an absurd idea. It's a good idea. I would be in favor of something like that. As long as we start somewhere, I think what you're going to find that there's not going to be any problems with this, the way it is written. It was written very well. I love the Parks and Rec board with the way things are going in our city. Trust me, we need a very strong Parks and Recreation board. And I respect and back you guys 100%.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Hey, Ted. So I'm just so that because I'm pretty new to the board. So you're in favor of the amendments here?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Up next, Ethel Brennan. Hi there.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to speak to you tonight wearing 2 different hats. I'm going to start with my president hat. I'm the current president of the Riverside Park Residents Association, I've been president for 7 years. I spoke at the commission meeting, and we did present a letter that our board voted in favor of the amendment being proposed. And I just wanted to also add the comment that in the 7 years that I've been president, the 8 years I've been involved with the association, there's not a day goes by that I'm doing something at the park that somebody hasn't asked me why Parks and Recreation has not installed dog bags, and I go through the whole scenario that they're breaking the rules currently. So I'm going to take my president hat off and now speak to you as a resident. First of all, I wanted to thank you all for the thought and care you put into drafting this amendment, because I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm personally shocked that we're back here today because I feel like it was eloquently written. I benchmarked it against other cities in Florida. I only brought 3 because I didn't want to waste too much trees. But the city of St. Petersburg, Florida, is constantly ranked as like a top dog-friendly city here in Florida. Their logo is actually a great city for all creatures. And they call it St. Pete Paws. And their parks and recreation rules have everything that you guys have in yours. In fact, the language that you guys drafted is more encompassing and more limiting here in the city of Fort Lauderdale. So I want to say that I'm in favor of the language as drafted. I think it's excellent, and I think today's discussions, I know the commission came back to you all to talk about which parks this should be in. If you look at a lot of the parks, I mean, the language is already very restrictive in general of where the leash dogs can be walked. And that's what this is about, is walking our dogs. It helps neighbors get to know each other, know each other's dogs. It's passive events. You know, if somebody wants to go in an unleashed environment, they can do so. Majority of dog owners don't do that. By allowing this law, it will allow the park rangers to also enforce those that are in the parks with their dogs unleashed. You know, I personally witnessed in one of our waterfront parks in Riverside Park, a park ranger take the time to turn around in the parking lot to come back and stop a woman who was just walking her dog leisurely and speak to her about it. And that's valuable park ranger time for more serious infractions. You know, we also have other problems in our parks that need more attention than somebody walking their dog on their lunch break. So hopefully you take that into consideration. I feel that, which was presented at the commission meeting by, I believe, the mayor and at least one other commissioner, of a trial period. And I think until you test something, there's no way to know if it works or not. And considering the impact is going to be very minimal that people are going to see, because the responsible dog owners are already walking their dogs peacefully in the parks. So I hope you take that into consideration tonight. Thank you.
Excuse me, can you state your name for the record?
Oh, Estelle Brennan.
Estelle, I have a question.
What? Oh.
Question. Sure. One of the things I've seen floated around was where the civic associations would opt in as far as the parks in their community be available for the on-leash dog program. That's something that you as a civic association president would be?
Quite honestly, I think it's administratively burdensome, and I feel like it's unnecessary. I think we're all grown adults. I think majority of dog owners are extremely responsible. I think the majority of people that came out were in favor of this to begin with at the commission meeting, and I just feel that, you know, the only way to do this is to test it. You guys did a valiant job in your language drafting, and I don't know why we're going to waste all this extra time with opt-ins and votes and all this. Let's put it out there. Let's see how it works.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Next, Melinda. Oops. Please state your name.
So, hello everyone. Linda Bowker. I'm president of the Downtown Fort Lauderdale Civic Association, and much like Estelle and the others, I'm not going to repeat. I'm in agreement with everyone who's spoken. We're all District 4 presidents. We're aware of the issue. And I guess in summary, speaking for myself, to echo what Estelle said, we are very much in favor of the 4.1 changes. I think it's item 4.1 within the rules and regulations that you guys drafted. Completely in favor of them. I think that this situation basically went off course once you had basically handed these over to commission for a vote. It got pulled, and since then there's been some discussion in District 4 regarding a certain park in Rio Vista, which I feel is the reason a lot of why this didn't pass commission. I'll be quite honest. That park, though, is not in my neighborhood, so speaking as the neighborhood president, I did want to let you all know that my board, downtown board, had a vote on May 2nd, and we did draft a letter. I think it was sent to everyone, so you guys have seen it a few times. But really what I wanted to emphasize besides that letter is, and I said this at commission as well, is that in downtown, we have one area, and you can call it a park, but it's really a right-of-way, and that's Riverwalk Linear Park, which is about a mile on each side of the New River, and that is open to dogs. But we have about 7 parks adjacent to the Riverwalk that technically, per your rules right now, and as Carl and I have discussed, parks like Smoker Park, Huizinga Park, Esplanade Park, Stranahan Park, Stranahan Landing, are not open to dogs. But in practice, nobody in downtown knows that or follows that. So the past decade, we really have been a test case, in my opinion, for the city of Fort Lauderdale on how a lot of people and a lot of dogs in a relatively small area have cohabited and moved around the parks with leash dogs without issues. We've had I think we're at 26,000 people living in the immediate downtown area, and we are utilizing those parks every day. So anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know this, that I do think you do have a case study that's been very successful. We're fully in support of your original suggestion to a commission. As far as why this came back to you, I think it's a little frustrating. The one thing I would say about the one suggestion that specifically came from Commissioner Warren Sturman in District 4 was to let each neighborhood decide which park would be the park that would allow leash dogs. I would be opposed to that. I think that, downtown we have 7 parks. We want them all open to everyone in the city. Particular neighborhood associations don't own title to these city lands. All taxpayers pay into their maintenance. And we have 110 parks and around 80 neighborhoods in the city. So if you're already talking each neighborhood gets 1 park for leash dogs, you're almost to all of your parks anyway. So I just think we have to think about equity. We have to think about people living in areas that are concrete and asphalt. They don't have the shade, the tree canopy that we have in some of the parks, and they need to be able to go into the park with their dog, any park in the city, and be welcomed there. I think it will work well. It's going great in Tampa and St. Petersburg. As Estelle said, I was there as well. And so I would just encourage a more universal, encompassing rollout, if at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Next on the list, Vanessa. State your name for us, please.
Hi, Vanessa Apotheker. I'm the president of Tarpon River Civic Association. I've also spoken at commission meetings about this. I agree with the previous speakers. I'm pretty sure I've emailed letters on behalf of the association as well. I know I don't have all the in front of me, but at least 6 out of 7 of my board members are in agreement. And we did a very informal raise your hand vote at my last association general meeting, and about 90% our association are in agreement that we should allow leash dogs in city parks, all of them. And I love the test it out plan. It is going to be a huge burdensome process to say, like, each association gets to pick and choose. I think that's about it. Oh, go ahead, Mary, I guess.
Okay, Vanessa, I have a little question.
Sure.
So you are family friends with the family whose little girl was bit, and I forget right now which park in the face.
At Hort Park in Shady Banks.
So it's constantly brought up to me, even tonight, by people that, oh, the little girl that was so horribly injured by a dog in Hort
Sure.
Park. And could you just let the members of the board know exactly how she recovered and how she is, and what the parents have to say about what happened?
Sure. So she's recovered. That dog, too, was playground at Hort Park, not like
Off
at,
the leash?
No,
Off
it was
the leash?
on a leash. Broke through the collar. But the owner took the dog on a leash to the play structure where the little girl was playing and said, "Do you want to pet my dog?" The dog has also had a previous incident of attacking a kid, so I'm not really sure why she offered for a child to pet her dog. And they have since, they now have their own dog. The little girl is fine. I mean, she's recovered, and she loves dogs. I was kind of worried that she's so friendly with dogs now. But she said that she's open for discussion. She's more concerned about having, like, if the dog has attacked somebody before, I mean, this isn't even part of the rules, but then you can't have, like, a dog with a criminal history at any park, like on leash or not. But
We'll make those dogs wear red collars.
Yeah. So she has said she's open to the discussion. She's not opposed or in favor. She also does not like, just to be blunt, the commissioner using that as an example to say we shouldn't have leash dogs at parks. He hasn't spoken for her about it. He doesn't know. He's just using it as an example and didn't speak to her about it. So I think that's really irresponsible as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, any discussion amongst the group here?
Yeah, I'm only somewhat familiar with what happened over there. I guess this question for the city and parks. Was that dog owner reprimanded in any way? Was there a police report or anything that can somehow, start a history of some sort of incidents with these dogs and their registrations?
So I'm not sure if there was an incident report. Hort Park is an unmanned park, and so city staff isn't located there. It was brought to my attention, I believe, from the then district commissioner at the time regarding what happened. So from the park standpoint, we don't have an incident report on it, but we're aware that it did happen.
I did hear that no charges were filed in the case and that everyone walked away and it wasn't as big of a deal. It only became a big deal once the dog issue came before the commission. It was used as an example of a problem that could occur. But also, what I heard could also be a rumor. So I don't have any factual basis to support it.
And it probably went around the world with Nextdoor, so you got to be careful what you hear and see on Nextdoor. Mary?
So I think most of the people that are in the audience, and I know this board knows, I'm all for dogs in the parks as written in the rules. We went through a lot of pain and suffering to write these rules, and they're very comprehensive, and they're based on a lot of other cities' rules. So I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I've said before, and I'll say it again, I have 4 children. None of them live in the same city. Everywhere that they live, New York, Chicago, Cleveland, LA, my sister in Denver, my sister in Greenwich, Connecticut, my other sister in Vero Beach, all those cities are allowed to have dogs in parks where it makes sense. So why we don't is just a phenomenon to me. So now having said that, and having gone to 2 commission meetings where a couple commissioners come up with some ideas that to me are that complicate the issue so much that it's just like, just let people walk their dogs in the parks like they are now, because quite frankly, they are. And we're just trying to put rules in place for something that's already happening. I was asked, but maybe I dreamed it. I don't think so, because it took me quite some time to write in an opt-in and opt-out document for neighborhoods that, for whatever reason, may have a park that's, let's say this passes as it is. Let's say there's a park that doesn't lend itself, or the neighborhood or the civic association feels that park doesn't lend itself to having dogs on leashes in the parks. I have written a document. I don't even know that all the board members have really read it. It was distributed to you on how a neighborhood could opt out of having a park with dogs on leashes, and how they can also opt back in. You know, things change, neighborhoods change, neighborhood populations change. I don't know if that's something the board wants to discuss or not, or
that could be something complicated for enforcement.
Say again?
That could be something complicated for enforcement if you're opting in and opting out of having dogs at the park.
Well, did you read the document? It's no little thing to do. So that's the other thing. I will say this too. We need better signage in the parks. I know it's just like walking along the beach. The signage along the beach where the dunes are and where dogs are allowed to be, it's gotten a lot better. You know, there's a lot more signs and they're bigger and stuff like that. I go to George English Park all the time. I don't see the sign. It's invisible to me now. Well, actually, I do now. But before this, we just need better signage of where dogs are allowed. Obviously, they're not allowed in the aquatic center, or some in a pool area. They're not, according to the rules, they're not supposed to be on the playground. Or on ball fields or soccer fields. So, you really have rules right now that. There are no rules right now. People are just walking their dogs in park anywhere they want. And so I'm just still for the way the rules are. But meanwhile, I did do what Carl said, and I went through the parks in District 1 that I didn't go through all of them, but I did talk to a good portion of them. And the only ones in District 1 that they really didn't want dogs in were in Sunrise Intercoastal, because they're little or they're just only a playground. So, anyway, that's where I stand on it. I'm not going to say a lot more because I could go on and on and on. So, here we go.
Go ahead.
I am all for dogs in the park. I did read your proposed, opt-in, opt-out. I think it's great. I love the ability for the community to have a say. I want to know, is there a way that could be maybe easier to deal with? Like maybe just giving the commissioners, the power to designate dog parks, whether dog friendly or not dog friendly, in their commission, in their district, as opposed to like all of the threshold rules, etc. It just seemed like it was onerous.
I think we've seen where that could go bad, especially in a year that's political like this. A commissioner will cave to, not a commissioner, a candidate or somebody, no offense, Ted, could cave to political pressure. I thought about that because that would certainly make it easy. And that commissioner for that district is very involved, but also the neighborhood has a voice too. That's what I was thinking anyway.
I think this regulation or these rules satisfy 99.9% of the people who have dogs, the very small percentage that may not want this in their parks. I hate to say it, but you can't satisfy all the people all the time. I think we've done a heck of a job writing these rules and regulations. I think they should go forward as proposed. The only concern I have is the rollout and the signage. That's all. Barbara.
So I talked to also District 4 Poinciana Park was in favor of having a dog park, but they specified only if their bags go into the park, the cleanup bags for that. So
That seems to be the biggest obstacle is signage and the poop bags and the place to place those afterwards.
and I like your opt-in, opt-out to give them.
Yes, my only comment is, that'll really be dictated on funding because signage alone is a fairly significant investment. And so we'd have to kind of figure out a way how to roll that in if that is the direction that we receive to do that.
Well, we just have $5.4 million in park impact fees.
Right, but we can't.
Carl,
we can't use park impact fees for that.
But it impacts the park if it's got poop all over the place.
I said earlier this evening, one of my daughters lives in New York City, and everybody has a dog in New York City, and if your dog poops in a park, and I've actually seen this, but she says it doesn't happen very often, and you don't pick it up, the other people that have dogs, which is everybody, scream and yell at the person for not picking up their poop and give them a bag, etc. So enforcement can come actually, from us, from the citizens. We can do something.
Carl, if you in terms of the poop bags, this is something our neighborhood wanted to do a long time ago in Cliff Lake Park, where we came to find out that you're not even supposed to have dogs in the park, but every neighbor walks their dog on that street, was to utilize advertising where the poop bags are as a way to pay for that thing. So that might be something the parks want to think about doing, and where it's no cost to you to have those bags because a veterinarian or somebody sponsored that poop bag dispenser.
Noted.
Mm-hmm. Just like the bus stops.
Just clarification on that point, are they planning on putting poop bags on most of the parks now? Is that something that has been considered?
No, so we have poop bags in our park-friendly sites. So this would kind of fall into that. And like I said, it'd just be phased in over time as we could afford to add.
So I can't speak to poop bags, but I can speak to the rules and regulations that we've been working on for more than 4 months. And more than half our board has changed since we started this. So I am a big proponent of this, and I hope we can move forward tonight with us.
I don't have any comments on the dog portion on it. There are a couple of comments I did want to make on the rest of the language. In 2.6, where we're talking about temporary and accessory structures, we then also have a later section 4.9 that covers the same topic. And they are a little bit, I don't want to say conflicting, but it could lead to some questions. Whereas 2.6 states that these things are strictly prohibited, except unless with prior written instruction by the city. In 4.9, it then states that you actually are permitted in certain areas where the city where people would normally do it. I think the language is, except with prior written consent of the city or where patrons are engaged in the temporary use of a beach umbrella, tent, or canopy, or the temporary use of personal property object during approved park activities or in areas where overnight camping is permitted by the city.
I'm sorry, sir. If
Yes.
you will allow me, do we need to vote before they leave? Or no?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
No, I'd like to talk about the language because in one section you're saying that these temporary structures are strictly prohibited unless you've got prior written approval by the city. In this other section, they're prohibited except if they're in areas where they're approved. So are they allowed or are they not allowed? So I think there's a little bit of a conflicting language, 2.6 and 4.9.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if we could defer to our legal to clear this up for us.
Yes. We do see some inconsistencies. So what we could do is you can either charge us with the duty to clarify the language and make it consistent so that it mirrors each other, or we can bring it back to you. It's up to you.
I move that you clarify for us.
Right, yeah, that you clarify for us.
The second point is with respect to section 4.7 and 4.10. Sorry, 4.8, disorderly intoxication and then disorderly conduct. Would it be possible to take those and put it into one? I imagine disorderly intoxication is disorderly conduct.
Well, I think, and I'll let Carl address this. I think staff's intent was to address other disorderly conduct, not just intoxication. But
Sure.
again, we can merge those into disorderly conduct to include intoxication. But
Okay. Then
initially, those two sections were kept, or those two terms were kept separate. Trying to keep them separate, that's what we did. But at your direction, we can, again, make it one section, include intoxication, public intoxication under disorderly conduct.
Okay,
That would
thank
be
you.
up to you to vote on that one.
And then the third point was with respect to 2.3, and this is where I'm too much of a lawyer. I apologize. In 2.3, one of the things it says that no person shall damage, dig in, or otherwise disturb the grass areas. And I totally understand the purpose of it, of why this is being put there. And of course, no one should be destroying our natural habitat. My concern is I do play flag football in our city parks, in our grassy areas, and my cleats literally do destroy the grass. But it's the intended use of it, so.
Except we can put an exception for except where
The
such
obvious use.
activity, obvious use, or such
Yeah.
activity is a permitted use or something. You want us
Exactly.
to put something like that?
Please.
Or I'm looking for direction other than yourself.
So-
Is that the board's?
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
I would move to give the city attorney's office discretion to amend it as in line with those directions.
I agree. And it might be just as simple as saying destroy versus disturb.
Yeah. However, it just makes sense in that, if you're doing something that's obviously intended, that you're not going to be in violation of the law.
So we're still going over the rules and okay, so I just had 2 copy editing notations, and I see that you also had copy editing notations throughout. On 2.4, I believe it should say accept as permitted instead of accepted.
Yes.
And the same for 2.5, accept and designated.
Yes. Noted. You're correct.
Okay.
Typo. Excuse the typo.
No, that's fine. I saw you made other corrections throughout, and I think that was the only question I had on the rules.
Go ahead.
Is there anyone from the community who also is going to chime in, again, or?
No,
Okay.
we are done with the speakers.
And then over here to accept. It should be accept.
I got one more question before we move forward.
Go
I
ahead.
see everybody here is in agreement. I think we're all pretty happy with the way things have rolled out. Well, shouldn't say rolled out. That's a little premature for that one. But I did notice on here some of the changes that were made. I know I missed a couple meetings, so I just wanted a quick clarification. Obviously, it seems all the guest speakers are happy with it. So I see that on the new one, that Dogs on the Riverwalk was stricken. It's B 4.1B, and I see it's been crossed out here. So, and it wasn't on the last set of rules. And I'm just curious. The dogs will be allowed on the Riverwalk, correct? Am I missing something?
Yeah, so the park rules where it's amended here is basically saying that they're allowed in all parks. And so when we're kind of using this, the Riverwalk is kind of considered that, although it's a right-of-way. It's
Beaches, Riverwalk, it's all considered park space.
Beaches are a little noted differently in here, is it's only permitted from Sunrise North. in the specific area between, I think it's Lifeguard Tower 19 or whatever the case, but north of Sunrise.
Dog Beach, yeah.
I have one question, because I know that based upon the speaker and just making sure that any bad dogs or anything that happens, I know we didn't really put anything about like 3 strikes and you're out situation, but like I guess my question is how would the park rangers, if they do go to different parks or something and there's an unruly dog that happens like every single time, is there something in place right now, or is there like a rule, or how would we deal with like unruly dogs?
Right now, we only have a duty to report under the code. Any bites? Are you referring to the bite incident?
Bites, or just I guess anybody that's like, I hate to say it, like just like
aggressive
keep on,
behavior, stuff like that.
Anything that's like keeps on happening. Is there a way to kind of say like you're not allowed?
Yes,
anymore?
so our park rangers would handle this similar to the way they would handle an individual whom is not complying with a park rule. And so initially the park rangers give them a warning, and then it's like progressive discipline where they would receive a 1-day trespass, and then that 1-day trespass would turn into 2 weeks, the 2 weeks to 30 days, and then you talk 6 months, on and on and on.
Bless you.
Any other comments?
On 410, I have a question about, so very often on the beach on Las Solis, there are people set up with microphones that are just, talking about politics or religious or something. And there's nothing here about, does that fall under the disturbing of the peace or people's enjoyment of the beach area, or like what's the law for that?
There's 4.5 addresses loud noises, I think.
Well, but 410 talks about, disturbing the peace and your enjoyment of...
We also have to take into account that there are certain First Amendment rights that we need to consider. So if, and I'll have to check our permitting requirements for that, but we can't just put these global rules to prevent freedom of speech, religion, etc. So we have to be careful about that. We're trying to control noise,
right? And
we're also trying to control disorderly conduct, but while preserving the public's constitutional rights, if that makes sense to you.
No, it does. Okay. But I just like, how do you balance that? Because
it's a tough balance. I welcome any proposed language, but on that one, I would definitely have to get back to you, because I would need to make sure that,
Okay. All right. And then on 5.7, there's no clarification. Does an e-bike fall under motorized vehicle? There's no, it talks about bicycles and it talks about motorized vehicles, but how are you going to, there's nothing that addresses e-bikes and where they can go and where they can't go.
Well, given, with the new equipment that's coming out, I welcome any additional language. We didn't touch this section, as you can see, but we're open to any type of proposals that you as a board have.
To me, if you're riding a bicycle, you follow 5.4. It just happens to be a motorized bicycle.
Right. So, motorized, so e-bikes, can they go on sidewalks? Can they go in parks on...
They should follow the same rules.
There should be a rule, because that's a question now.
Yeah, they should follow all the rules in 5.4.
I thought they had to follow the same rules as like an electric scooter. Yeah. It's the same as a scooter.
Yeah, right. Even golf carts have been a problem, and motorized vehicles should be under that, but without having these things specifically there, I see golf carts in Holiday Park all the time.
Yeah, if you as the board are okay, we can add motorized and electric vehicles so that it encompasses that section.
I think that's a good idea. Everybody agree?
That's an easy fix.
Another question I had actually about the loud noises. If someone's having a party at their house, I believe there's some decibel level that's like...
It's already controlled under the code, so they have to meet a certain level. And I don't have it in front of me right now because this table is too big for me right now.
Sure, yeah.
So, but yes, there are specified decibel levels that's permitted under the code. And of course, if that's violated, then code enforcement will come out or the police will come out.
So where I'm going to is with respect to the public park, like as written, it says, that any other device that generates loud noise or disturbs other patrons, is prohibited. Is loud noise just like subjective, or is that same decibel amount applicable there?
I can make a reference to that decibel noise level in the code, if that is your wish. Of course, that would make it more objective.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wonder because, if I'm playing music on my phone at a park and someone says, hey, that's too loud, or they don't like it, according to the language, technically I would be in violation because it's any device that generates loud noise or disturbs other patrons. So if they say it's a loud noise and they're disturbed by it, technically I would be in violation. So I just wonder, and I don't know if that decibel level is actually good for the park. You know what I mean? I just wonder, is there some type of objective measure to determine whether
I think we
or not
need to leave it subjective.
The decibel level would make it objective,
right?
As referenced by board member. But if we leave it this way, it will make it more subjective. But I think with the noise ordinance, it's used more for like the parties and outdoor events,
Airbnbs
like really loud
and things
noise.
like that.
So
I'm okay.
I didn't want to touch that, but if you want me to put it to qualify it that way,
I
because
would
these
not
are the park rules.
I would encourage us.
Yeah.
I would encourage us not to add anything to that. It's
If it doesn't meet that decibel level, and it's a park.
Yeah. Or
Again, these are park rules. We do have the ordinance, and they can still code, and the officers, if it gets to they can still go out, in my opinion, to regulate it that way.
I agree.
And to add, so these are park rules, as Assistant City Attorney just mentioned, not an ordinance law. So these are written with the intention of some vagueness so that there is some interpretation to them.
Okay.
I also have on 8.0, just about the parking. It says about paying fees. Most of our parks have no fees. I think something should be in there about parking. Should be added to that line.
We can put. I think these were intended to be user fees. Are they user fees, Carl?
Correct.
That's why I didn't.
More so
I meant
user
to
fees.
ask you about that.
So many years ago, we used to charge at the gate for, like, let's say Snyder Park for entrance, but we no longer do that. There is a parking decal that's there for you to do on weekends.
Right. So then shouldn't the word parking be in that somewhere? Like all persons shall pay the entry fee, parking fee, or charges established by the city commission.
But places like La Sola Slot, when they have a special event, will charge a flat rate of $20 when, even if you're a resident, you don't get the residence parking. So,
Right.
It seems like that's going to go right back to maybe a place that you park regularly for free might not be free for certain times or special events.
I was reading this as like pavilion rental or space rental at the park.
Yeah, actually, I meant to call Carl and say, is this the user fee, similar to whatever user fee you charge for a pavilion or even whatever else? But I didn't get to it. But we can call it, we can title it user parking fees. What else was there? Or we can include that language in the body of that section. But I believe that is
the intention. It's a facility use fee. And like I said before, these rules have been used for many years, and which is why we often update them every few years for that specific purpose, because how we manage and operate the parks changes over the years. And so for this particular situation, if there's a pavilion, if there is a facility rental, like an indoor facility, that's more so what this speaks to as opposed to parking. But we can certainly look at this and make adjustments as required.
So just for my own edification, are you suggesting we include, so I think Carl or his team's intent was to make this facility and or user fees? That was supposed to be the title. But in the body, do you want us to specify facility, user fee, parking fees? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, the way I was reading it was fees, and I go to parks. I don't pay any fees, but I pay for parking all the time. So it just seemed like that should be included. But
okay,
I'm not that picky.
I think, and you can correct me, Carl. I believe some parks do have some fees that you have to pay.
Yeah, only Snyder. All the other parks don't. I mean, the beach is different. That's handled through parking enforcement.
Okay.
So that's
all right.
not
If it doesn't apply, I'm not that picky.
No, we can include parking.
I didn't know if it was omitted by mistake or so you don't have to put it for my account.
You guys, we're here for direction on how you want us to finalize these rules or whether you want us to come back one more time. So
no, we don't want you to come back one more time. I think we're giving you the latitude to make the necessary corrections. Yeah, you know what we're looking for. I think we want to give you the latitude to make those corrections according to our wishes, and I think we've done a great job, and I think we need to move on and forward with this whole thing.
I second that.
And before you all put this to a vote, I just want to clarify for our own purposes so that when Carl and I butt heads, I know who's right and who's wrong. But, okay, so the trees, we're going to include language to similar to except where such activity or athletic activity or use is permitted, correct?
I think we just decided the word disturb would be destroy. It's that
yes,
simple.
I have that. I crossed out disturb. Okay.
Well,
Or whatever her brother's
I think a better recommendation would be just to put like an exception of like unless and I don't know the exact language, but unless in doing so would be in line with like the intended use of that area.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yes. So that one, no, I have some other, just to clarify. And then 2.6 should be reconciled with 4.9 so that the accessory structures, anyway, we're going to make sure that those are either merged or they mirror each other. But they're probably going to be merged if it's going to be duplicative language. So, so we'll do that. And then I believe there was two more. So 4.8, we're going to also merge that with 4.10. So that will include intoxication with disorderly conduct?
I think one person made that suggestion. I don't know if everyone agrees with that.
Okay, so that's...
I think we should keep the intoxication separate from the disorderly conduct.
I agree with that.
Personally, everybody agree?
Yeah, just to kind of underscore the importance.
Right.
Okay, so there's no agreement on that. So keep them separate? Okay,
yes.
No problem. Let me cross out my notes. Again, that's why I'm going over this with you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, the last one I have is 4.7, motorized vehicles. We're going to title it motorized and electric vehicles. Is there anything in the body, except for the title, that we're changing? In the body of that section? We're going to
I don't believe so. Anybody else?
We're going to include the word electric as well. Motorized and electric vehicles. And then
good.
Okay. So, am I missing any other edits?
Electric vehicles can go on bike paths, correct?
Excuse me?
Can electric vehicles go on bike paths? Electric bikes are going on bike paths. So you can't just put
Okay,
under
so
motorized.
then what we can do is also include electric bicycles where it defines bicycles on 5.4.
Okay.
So we
Yep.
can specify regular bicycles and electric bicycles, e-bikes?
Yeah, I think it's, with all the e-bikes today, it should be clear
Okay.
what you can and
We'll
cannot
include
do.
e-bikes in 5.4, and we'll still put motorized and electric vehicles.
In 5.4, you have all bicyclists.
I'm sorry?
5.4 reads as an all bicyclists. So it doesn't matter if they're on an electric bike or a regular bike, they're on a bike.
I think we're just trying to clarify for people to realize that we're talking about both pedal bikes and electric bikes.
On this one, it's up to you.
So, yeah, the 5.4 should say about e-bikes, but 5.7 should not include the e-bikes because they are allowed on the bike paths.
No, we 5.7, what we were going to include is we're going to include the words and electric. So between motorized and vehicles, we would add, so the title would be motorized and electric vehicles, not bikes. We're not going to use the term bikes.
Okay.
So for your request, that's why I was proposing we change the title on 5.4.
Okay.
And I believe the board member indicated that bicycles, it says all bicycles, but if you want to clarify it further, I mean...
I think we should change the title to bicycles and electric bicycles or e-bikes, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, bikes and e-bikes.
So I will need you all to either vote as a whole on these changes, or if anyone objects, then we're going to have to take them one by one. Are you all in agreement, or do you want to take them one by one?
Is everybody in agreement?
Yes.
I'm in agreement. I didn't see anything changed in 7.0, or is the whole section?
7.0? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
just because it's in the meeting agenda for today.
Yeah, there are no recommended changes for 7.0, so.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay.
The only thing that I'm kind of not in agreement are the e-bikes being allowed as bicycles, because to be honest, they can go really fast.
Can we just take them one by one? Because for, the record and to clarify everything, let's just take the sections one by one, have them vote on the edits, and if we need to tweak the edits, at that point we can do that based on your discussions, and then we can, that would be a cleaner way to do it. That's what I recommend.
Do we want to do it one by one or just the ones we have concern about?
That's up to you, Mr. Chair. I recommend one by one, but we can always do it the way you feel is best.
I'm in favor of just highlighting the subject or the section that is in question because I heard agreement across everything else except for that one item.
Sorry, I'm looking at the rules now in Florida, and it says electric bikes, e-bikes are allowed on bike paths, bike lanes, and other paths that are open to bicycles, so never mind.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I make a motion to move forward with 4.0, which is what the community's here to listen to, I think. And so I move forward with that. And
I think we can do the whole thing.
We can?
We can do the whole thing.
Yeah, she's retracted her objection to the wording.
Okay.
You rescinded that?
Yeah, she rescinded
I'm
it.
sorry, I didn't hear you.
Hear that either.
Okay.
So I think we can vote on the package in its entirety as you have suggested we edit it and let you all take care of those items that we had questioned about, and the semantics of the wording. And that we could all
As
vote.
per your directives, we'll do that before we present it to commission.
I think we're all in agreement with that. I see a bunch of heads nodding, so we can do this in one vote.
So you still need a motion, though?
Yes,
Right.
we need a
Okay.
motion and a
Yes.
second, and a roll call, please.
I make a motion that we accept all the edits that have been suggested
Can the chair make the motion? Sorry, Charlie.
Somebody else makes that motion
I'll
for
make
me,
a motion
please.
to approve the new rules with the edits suggested, and Carl's discretion for any particular wording, understanding what we are trying to accomplish.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
I got it. Okay. So that was Palazzo. Was first, second was Blackburn. Yes, got it. Okay, roll call. Mr. Colazzo.
Yes.
Ms. Peliquin.
Yes.
Mrs. Tarko.
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein.
Yes.
Ms. Oglesby.
Yes.
Ms. McGill.
Yes.
Ms. Rexo.
Yes.
Ms. Sisler.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover. That's right. Abstain. Okay, and Chair Lykoff.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Unanimous.
Did you abstain? Okay.
So motion passes.
Who let the dogs out, huh? I've been waiting to say that.
Okay.
Who thought we don't
Do we have
change
any-
for more rules?
Yeah. Do we have any new business?
I have a question from last meeting for Director Carl, if he has time. Is that new business? Just a quick question.
Go ahead and ask a question.
Director Carl, do you have an update on whether we're getting income from the Grove putting up the sign at Fort Lauderdale Beach?
Income from the sign that says welcome to Follow.
So in the last meeting, I asked if there was a promotional sign, a promotional flag on Fort Lauderdale Beach near Lifeguard Station 1416,
Okay.
across from the old Park and Ocean. And you were going to inquire to see if we're actually receiving dollars. So that's it. There's no pressure, just if you can follow up.
Okay.
Okay.
Carl, there was a question about the balloons we were talking about earlier. Is that something was on the agenda for tonight?
No, so that's what I mentioned earlier about adding the language of city, park, public, and or facilities, so it's inclusive of the beach, because how it reads now, the beach isn't listed there,
Okay.
and that's where people tend to let off balloons, and so we want to make it consistent, but also keep the language throughout the document.
Okay, so what we did tonight included the balloon situation.
Yes.
Okay.
So what we're proposing, just to clarify, is going through the rules and including beach wherever we stay, park, city park, and park facilities. We'll say even though
Beach is a park.
the code identifies the beach boundaries as park or recreational area, but we will make it clearer
Right.
in the rules, in the park rules, so
Thank
that the
you.
layman knows that a beach is also considered a park
Yeah,
or recreational
most people
activity.
don't, so it's a good idea that we're doing that. Thank
Yes.
you. Mary?
Yes, we'll do that.
Just, I assume we're not going to meet here again because I am hearing impaired. I mean, I really seriously am. But the acoustics in here are tough. But I think we met here because there has to be a lot of people, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll move back to our Fire Station 3.
Okay, thank you.
Any other new business from anybody? Barbara?
Carl, what's going on with Beach Park? It looks like it's getting very close to being finished. Is there a grand opening date?
Yeah, so you're referring to DC Alexander. So we are finalizing some project from FP&L, some work that FP&L has to do to the grounds. And we anticipate that to be done next month. And we're probably do some punch list items. And so we're hoping that we'll probably do a ribbon cutting sometime in October or early November.
Okay.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah. Is there going to be like a rubberized thing where the kids play? What's going to be on the ground there?
No, there is like some turf elements on there. There's a slide, which we kind of worked through some shading elements so that you don't burn yourself on it. But yeah, so it's pretty much, and it also has the viewing dock too. So that facility is essentially almost done.
Okay.
Anything else?
So I wanted to follow up on the rule about people who don't have children on playgrounds. I know you guys were working on that. What is the update on that? Because there has been a lot of violence in District 3, Carter Park, Riverland Park specifically. But I, as a mama too, have so much anxiety just going to a playground these days. So
we're currently working on a draft for commission consideration. However, we do have to do our due diligence and check on any possible or any pending or threat of litigation regarding any constitutional rights or challenges.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
that's where you're at.
That's why we haven't rolled it out yet.
Okay.
But we
So
are
that
working
makes
on the
sense.
draft.
Okay.
It's hopefully imminent, but we're waiting on some cities to respond because apparently it's more popular than we thought it was, that type of regulation.
Okay.
Yeah, so Palm Beach County, Hollywood, Miami Beach, can't think off the top of my head, but there are multiple cities and counties with similar regulation.
Okay.
Any other new business? Going once, going twice. I want to thank everybody for their cooperation and help tonight. So somebody needs to make a motion.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Thank you, everybody.